right, you are now live.
Okay, thank you very much. Alder Taft, would you like to make a motion?
Yes, I would like to move to adopt the negotiated settlement as discussed in closed session.
Is there a second on that motion?
Second.
Seconded by Alder Santiago. This time he beat Alder Co. Any further discussion on the settlement? Seeing none, when the clerk calls your name, please vote as you wish.
Alder Peterson,
Aye.
Alder Coe,
Aye.
Alder Jones,
Aye.
Alder Tate II,
Aye.
Alder Santiago,
Aye.
Alder Horton,
Aye.
Alder West,
Aye.
Alder Pete,
Aye.
Alder Rouse,
Aye.
Alder Taft,
Aye.
Alder Mi'kmaq.
Aye.
That is 11 ayes.
Okay, thank you very much. The next, I guess, Alder Taft, did you have any other items for separate consideration under your report?
I received no such requests.
Seeing no such request, I will then, without objection, move the remainder of these items to the consent agenda. We have a bit of an error since we are missing, oh, Alder Co.
Yeah, I would like, hold on a minute. Want to make sure I'm in the right spot. One, separate consideration on item 0697-21.
697. Okay. Alder Taft, would you please read that item?
Sure thing. Okay. Item 0697-21, subject communication from Mayor Mason requesting an allocation of $450,000 in American Rescue Plan Act funding for eviction prevention activities. Recommendation of the Finance and Personnel Committee was to allocate a total up to $450,000 in ARPA funding to Racine County for eviction prevention activities. The recommendation were to be approved. Further, that the mayor and city clerk be authorized to enter into a contract with Racine County pursuant to all local, state, and federal regulations. Fiscal note, a total of $500,000 in ARPA funds have been reserved for activities including eviction prevention by Common Council. Resolution number 583-21. Sufficient funding exists to meet this request.
Is
Move to approve.
Okay, Alder Taft has made a motion to approve item 0967-1. There's a second by Alder Tate II. Any discussion on the item? Alder Co, you asked for separate consideration. Do you want to speak to that?
Yes. I mean, all right. I think there's a better use for these dollars. We should use it for stabilizing neighborhoods, making them safer. We have a lot of vacant properties. Why are we not doing more to improve housing? With all of the violence lately, we need to focus on improving neighborhoods. This $450,000 will help people in the short term. What do we do after this money runs out and people are still being evicted? We need to focus on long-term solutions. Why I'm supportive of doing this, I mean, there's been a lot of money given out over the last, from the federal government and stuff like that. And I don't think this is ever going to end. And I mean, how are we going to focus on this problem after this money runs out? That's all. So I will be voting no on this item.
Anyone else like to speak to the item? Alder Tate II.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm speaking in support of this item for obvious reasons. One, we previously passed a resolution allocating numerous funds to address multiple issues, including housing enrichment in that same resolution, as well as these dollars to deal with evictions. It was a package, and this is the first time we're actually specifically allocating the funds that we already approved to an entity to do this particular work. So this isn't an either or situation of, well, should we be rehabilitating communities or should we be preventing people from being homeless? It's a both and that's what these funds are for. So we shouldn't pose it as an either or situation when we need to be doing both to stabilize our communities, because I don't think very safe communities have homeless people either, or people getting kicked out on the curb when they can't afford to pay their rent because of the pandemic. So let's not pick and choose, which folks get the help when they need it. and recognize that these funds are available to help everybody as much as we can because many people in our community need it right now. Thank you.
Thank you. President Tate's point, in addition to the rhetorical flourish, is procedurally an important distinction here. We've already allocated the funds for this purpose. We're just deciding whether or not the funds allocated will go to this entity to execute the purpose that the council has already decided to do. Alder Peterson.
Yes, just a quick question. When these funds are allocated, and I voted to have them allocated, is there any requirement for the recipients to show any type of COVID-related needs, or is it just anybody in general that's having difficulties eligible for them? Thank you.
I will ask either Kathleen Fisher, who will speak to the lengthy amount of requirements that are there on ARPA funds that the federal government puts on us, or I will ask Bill Bowers to comment, or Paul Bornholt to comment on the criteria used for the people eligible for these funds.
So I can start just by saying that obviously when we allocate funds to an entity, we have reporting requirements on how they met that compliance, what the program was for, what the funds were used for. On the recipient side of Racine County, but more specifically Hero Health, they will have as well reporting requirements, and they will have, we've arranged with them that and as we have in the past, we'll have outcomes and the specific guidelines that they must use. They're mostly income related, but obviously COVID can have a huge impact right on your economic status these days. So, I mean, I hope, does that answer your question? It's not specifically COVID, but it is in relationship to the pandemic and COVID and the negative economics that it's had on someone, but it's more economic driven, income driven.
Alder Peterson, did that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Other questions or comments or members of the council who would like to speak to the allocation of or the approval of the previously allocated monies to Racine County's Here to Help with eviction prevention? Anyone else wishing to speak on item 0967-21? Seeing no other members present wishing to speak to the item, when the clerk calls your name, please vote as you wish.
Alder Peterson,
Aye.
Alder Cole,
No.
Alder Jones,
Aye.
Alder Tate II,
Yes.
Alder Santiago,
Aye.
Alder Horton,
Aye.
Alder West,
Aye.
Alder Pete,
Aye.
Alder Rouse,
Aye.
Alder Taft,
Aye.
Alder Meekma.
Aye.
That's 10 ayes and 1 no.
Okay. Alder Taft, back to your report. Are there any other items for separate consideration? Any other
I have-
items? Oh, go ahead.
I received no such requests. Checking the email one more time. I have received no such requests.
Okay. Seeing no such requests, then we will move on to, I'm sorry, then without any further objections, we will place the remainder of these items on the Finance and Personnel Committee report onto the consent agenda. Moving on now to Planning, Heritage, and Design. Just as an FYI, Public Works didn't meet for lack of a quorum. I don't want anyone to think that Alder Jones is not holding up her responsibility on doing her reports. She definitely is. But that moves us on to Planning, Heritage, and Design. We erroneously have Alder Young, our former colleague, listed as the person who would give commentary here. He is no longer on Planning, Heritage, and Design. So I will ask President Tate to read the item, please.
You know, nothing. And no one would ever think that about Alder Jones. And if they did, shame on them. Let's see where we're at. Item, well, I've got no items for separate consideration. But item 0670-21, request by Vincent Lang representing Rebel Realty LLC for consideration of a conditional use permit to operate a real estate brokerage office classified as a business and professional office as allowed by the listed municipal code at an existing building at 3624 Washington Avenue. The recommendation of the Planning, Heritage, and Design Committee was that the request be approved, subject to conditions A through G. Move to approve.
Motion to approve the item. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Alder Pete, I believe. Although I could have had Alder Pete do the report since he was there. My apologies, Alder Pete. Probably should have done that. But any discussion on this item? Seeing no discussion on the conditional use permit, when the clerk calls your name, please vote as you wish.
Alder Peterson,
Aye.
Alder Cole,
Aye.
Alder Jones,
Aye.
Alder Tate II.
Aye.
Alder Santiago,
Aye.
Alder Horton,
Aye.
Alder West,
Aye.
Alder Pete,
Aye.
Alder Rouse,
Aye.
Alder Taft,
Aye.
Alder Mikma.
Aye.
11 ayes.
Thank you very much. We now move on to the committee of the whole report. President Tate, do you have any items for separate consideration?
We're going to take them all up separately, just in case alders have additional feedback from our last joint meeting together, and any comments or questions about the processes that we're going to be presenting. So item 0709-21, communication from myself, requesting to discuss the process for filling the vacancy for the 9th Aldermanic District. The recommendation that the process for filling be to appoint a new alder for the 9th District to fulfill the term until a special election is held to coincide with spring 2022 elections. Move to approve.
There's a motion to approve this item. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Alder Jones. Any further discussion on this item? Alder Tate, do you want to speak to your motion?
Yes, I just wanted to note, we did ask city staff, as we discussed in the meeting, to provide a memo kind of outlining what that process would look like. So we do expect that we'll post that the position is now kind of open, receiving interest. And then we're going to close that on Friday, September 17th. So applicants should apply from now until then. I believe a link will be posted or directly to the city clerk. And then what our plan to do then is to interview interested candidates on September 21st at 6 p.m. If there are more than 4 candidates, we'll be scheduling an executive committee prior to that to narrow it down to 4 candidates for the committee of the whole to take up. Then at that time, we will interview the 4, I guess, finalists, for lack of a better term, by the entire council. You'll be each asked to submit, several questions, for probably no more than 3, to the city attorney, who will then kind of compile them as we always have done. And narrow down any particular questions that are duplicative and try and minimize the time so that all 4 candidates, if that is as many how it is, has the opportunity to kind of fully flesh out questions and answer them. At which point we'll do a blind vote or a silent vote amongst us. And then if it ends up being tied, then we narrow it down to the top 2 vote getters, et cetera, until one is there. But that's the timeline. That's the process. Just want to make that clear, since we didn't necessarily discuss what happens next in our committee of the whole meeting, for anyone who's paying attention. So for residents of the 9th, as it's currently constructed, if you're interested in filling this seat until the spring, next spring, certainly submit your name and your interest, and we'll proceed from there. Part of the reason why it was on my mind to go with a spring special is because by January 1, there will actually be a different district, and it may be different than the person who's currently sitting in there. And we want to give that new district an opportunity to elect their representative, at least for the remainder of that term. So that's all that. If you have any questions, if not, we can move on from there with the vote.
Any questions on that process? I just want to note that Alder Lemke has joined us. Welcome, Alder Lemke. Great to see you. Any questions? Oh, no, I'm confused if people are waiting to Alder Lemke or if they have questions on President Tate's questions. If you have questions for Alder Tate on the process for replacing the successor in the 9th, please virtually or physically raise your hand. Seeing no further questions, when the clerk calls your name, please vote as you wish.
Alder Peterson,
Aye.
Alder Cole,
Aye.
Alder Jones,
Aye.
Alder Tate II,
Aye.
Alder Santiago,
Aye.
Alder Horton,
Aye.
Alder West,
Aye.
Alder Pete,
Aye.
Alder Rouse,
Aye.
Alder Taft,
Aye.
Alder Mikma,
Aye.
Alder Lemke.
Aye.
That's 12 ayes.
Motion passes. Alder Tate, did you want to read the next item for separate consideration?
Certainly do. Item 0710-21, communication sponsored by Alder Meekma, proposing the attached code of conduct policy be adopted. Move to approve.
Second.
Motion to approve the item. Alder Meekma, would you like to second the item?
Second.
Great. Alder Tate, would you like to speak to the motion?
Not exactly, but we've obviously had this in the works for roughly 3 years now. And it's been a thoughtful, deliberative, comprehensive process and discussion. And I definitely want to express my appreciation to all the alders who were present last Wednesday to contribute and get them engaged in that discussion. I think what we have before us has a much better, clear understanding and is a better product. I did want to specifically pull this for separate consideration because I do know if alders had any additional concerns or potential amendments that they wanted to make tonight, this would be their opportunity to do so. But otherwise, I think this is a good thing going forward as we have something on paper that kind of codifies the expectations of alders that we can, reference and make sure that we're upholding, the highest standard of conduct.
Thank you, Alder Tate II. Alder Meekma.
Thank you, Your Honor, and thank you, President Tate II, for your comments. And I just kind of want to build on what President has said about this and just kind of revisit a little bit about where we were at and coming into this and what some of the discussion points were made at last week. And again, as President Tate II said, thank you to everybody who was able to be there. And I know many of you weren't able to be there, but have either shared with me some thoughts or have been a part of this discussion in the past. So when we're looking at this, it starts, and I want to start by just reiterating that when I initially introduced this, it was largely because we didn't have a policy or a procedure of this nature. Many other communities have codes of conduct for their councils. That was one of the reasons I introduced this. And I felt it was important that we do. I think the more things we have in writing specifically to guide us or as resources as we go through our duties each and every day or each and every meeting, it is much better to have it in writing in a place that we can reference it or utilize it when necessary. I know early on some of the concerns were that this was intended to be punitive and as a tool to limit other alders' abilities. From my intent that was not a part of the reason that this was brought forward. Again, it was really just because this is a good practice to have in place. Most businesses have things like this. Most nonprofits have things like this. Other bodies of government have versions of this. I thought it was an important thing for us to have. So that was what led us to this introduction of this. Throughout the time, we've had conversations about being more clearly defined, about adding some pieces to it. Some of that has been done. Some of it we have not for various reasons. Part of that discussion was in the general definition of ethical behavior itself. And there is some argument to be made about leaving that a little bit vague intentionally. You can over define something. If we were to work to include everybody's definition of ethical conduct in this document could be significantly longer than it is necessary. But we also do have, and Attorney Letney can speak to this as well, we also do already have in the Racine ordinances a code of ethics for the city officials and employees, which really outlines and defines what that ethical conduct should be for us as well. So we could redefine it in another place, risk over defining something that I think is a little bit better served if it's undefined. Again, my opinion. And that is why we ultimately have not put a more clear definition of ethical conduct in there, though it is referenced and there are identifications of conduct throughout the document that really do, I think, highlight what ethical conduct could be or should be. Now, the other piece of this was the punitive piece that has come up multiple times. There is a section in there if people are looking at the document. It is on page 4. It is the top of page 4, item D, where it is attend to duties of the office. It does talk about neglect of duty. the omission to perform duty, including but not limited to several things that are listed there. And it does identify that the council shall be the judge of election and qualification of its members, may compel their attendance, and may fine or expel for neglect of duty. Now, that is not something new to this document. That is already in Wisconsin statute and is just included in this document as the reference to that Wisconsin state statute. That's section 6211(3)A. It's again not something that was just made up as a way to, make people fall in line. I really just wanted this as a way to help guide us, as a way to help us have in writing realistic conduct expectations. It's a way to hold each other accountable, and certainly, open to suggestion. But I definitely am hoping that at some point we can move this forward so we can get it into position as many other communities have. So I don't know if any other members from that last week want to expand on any of that. Attorney Letney, is there anything that you would add that I left out as far as the policy and procedure components of this?
Attorney Letney, anything you'd like to add procedurally to the description of the proposed policy on conduct?
Thank you. It's not letting me put my video on, but I'm here. I would also note that there is a statutory code of ethics for local public officials that exists too. Our ordinances are very similar to the statute, so there is a lot of information out there to define some of these terms and to define some behaviors that are anticipated. Beyond that, obviously, it's a matter of policy for the council to decide.
Thank you, Attorney Letney. Alder Jones.
Thank you, sir. Just one question in section 6. I just wanted to know if we would be able to add that any council member, if they aren't already aware, that they can attend the other 2 standing committees other than the ones that they are seated on. Some of them may not be aware, and everyone may be aware, but I just thought, would it be possible to add that in, that they could attend the standing committee meetings along with the boards and commission meetings?
Alder Jones, I will perhaps, if he's okay with it, direct your question to the drafter of the proposal, Alder Miedema, to see if he has any reaction to that, unless you wanted to do a hard recommendation there. Alder Miedema, would you yield to that inquiry?
Yeah, and thank you, Alderwoman Jones. I think that's a great suggestion. And in every document, there's always room for improvement and growth and development. This is by no means a perfect document. And I think, to my point earlier, the more clearly we can define any portion of this in things of that nature, where we are identifying lists or parts of things that should be included, I think, yeah, absolutely. So I would certainly support including more inclusive language about what committees alders can be a part of and participate in.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alder Jones. Alder Rouse.
Yeah, thank you for calling on me. I had 2 questions. One of which being, I noticed that the time limit set for public comments was listed as 5 minutes. Is that a change? Are we adopting 5 minutes now where it can be shortened? Let's say if there was less people or if there was more people.
That is a good question. I will defer to Attorney Letney to explain the potential proposed deviation from our 3 minutes for public comments to 5 minutes as part of it.
I think honestly that 5-minute language was in a draft version of the code of conduct, but the ordinance says, I'm just checking it to be safe, says 3. So unless the council wanted to amend the ordinance on that issue, then the ordinance would control. And if you don't, yeah, it's 3 minutes. If we don't want to, specifically in the ordinance, it's 3 minutes. If you don't want to amend that time, then this code of conduct would be amended so that 3 minutes is in there.
Okay, thank you. And then the second question I had was in regards to how do we bring out these concerns we have based on this new code of conduct? Like if it happens during a meeting, is this a point of order? Is this how do we go about, or is this all after the fact? Let's say we have a complaint or we have an issue. Do we bring it up after the fact, then deliberate as a council, or how does that process work?
Attorney Letney, could you address mechanically how the proposal works?
Sure, and let me just correct something I just said. The code of conduct that's proposed does consistently say 3 minutes for public comments. The 5 minutes that's listed, and I apologize for missing this before, the 5 minutes is listed if there's a public hearing, which is a specific thing, not the public comment section during common council meetings. So public hearings generally occur for zoning ordinances, conditional use permits, and a variety of things like that. So there could be a couple of ways if an alder has concerns that someone has violated this code of conduct. One is there could be a point of order raised during a meeting and ask the mayor or committee chair or the president of the council during committee of the whole meetings, raise a point of order and ask the chair to address whatever that point of order is in the moment. If there's something that is something that either doesn't occur in the moment or something that perhaps an alder believes is more serious, then it actually could be included on an agenda item as a specific issue to be addressed at a meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you. Alder Taft.
Thank you. Okay, I apologize for my inability to be at the committee of the whole meeting. I did talk to the maker of the motion and the president about some of my concerns. I think overall we really need this. I was definitely in favor of this the last time it came up, so I'm in no way speaking against it. I do want some clarification on just a couple of things. And so in no particular order, one, just in case we ever have anyone in the council who is non-binary, I'd like to change the he, she language to they in this if possible. I just think that's, something we could do instead of saying he, she, that they are not speaking. That would be helpful. The other thing I would like to see, there's a couple specific things I wanted to see. So as far as the neglect of duty issue, attendance to duties of office. So on page 4, section 2, section 2D, we're talking about council should be the judge of election and qualification of its members, compel their attendance, may fine or expel for neglect of duty, and then neglect of duty is the omission to perform a duty. I think one of my concerns is what about things that don't involve neglect of duty, but perhaps things like discussing what was discussed in a closed session, for example, outside of a closed session. Like that's sort of an active dereliction of duty that isn't specifically referenced in this document, and I think that should be included. So that's one thing I would like to see, and I don't know if we need to send it back in committee or if we can amend it now or whatever. I guess I'd like to hear what other alders have to say about that. Those kinds of things. And then the other issue I had was the conduct of alders with each other and the staff outside of public meetings. I'd like to see more reference specifically to, public to include social media, not just, personal interactions. So those are things that I'd like to see added or adjusted to this, but I'd love to hear feedback from other alders if they have thoughts about those.
Okay, other comments or reactions to any of those things? Alder Lemke.
Guess I would just have a follow-up question. I generally agree with a lot of what's been said as a whole from the alders, but I definitely want to make sure that like the code of conduct is covering things that aren't like duplicative of like whatever is in statute, because then we'll always have to be going back and forth and matching them up. So I don't know if Attorney Letney could provide clarifications about like what Alder Taft said about, actively sharing, say information outside a closed session. Is that something that's already covered? Or is that something that would need to be added? Just because I'm not exactly clear on the interface of those two things.
Attorney Letney, could you add some clarification there?
Sure. First, I would note that in the draft code, in the sort of preamble section, it does say that each member of the Common Council has a duty to refrain from disclosing information received confidentially concerning the business of the city or received during any closed session held pursuant to state law. Also in, trying to find it specifically in the ordinances, but there is a section in the ordinances in the ethics section that requires all information that is, here it is, all public officials shall not disclose confidential information or privileged information gained in the course of or by reason of his or her official position or activities. So that is included there. And confidential information is defined as written material or oral information related to city government, which is not otherwise subject to public records law and which is expressly designated or marked as confidential. And privileged information means information obtained under government authority, which has not become a part of the body of public information. So that would be closed session items. And I would note that by ordinance, and I don't mean to sound threatening to anyone, but somebody could be cited for misconduct in office under the Code of Ordinances, and that would be potentially a citation that would be heard before the municipal court. There's also criminal misconduct in office statutes that are misdemeanors. And of course, if the code of conduct that is presented requires alders to or all elected officials to comply with all laws. So violating any ordinances would be violating this code of conduct, would be considered neglect of duty, which I think is respectfully, Alder Taft, I think it's a little broader than you stated, but it does include generally failure to comply with ordinances and other laws. So the council, if it deemed appropriate, could take action against any other elected official who did violate the law in that way.
Alder Taft, did that clarify, or Alder Lemke rather, did that clarify your question?
Yeah, I think so. And I just wanted to be mindful in general about if we were intentionally like adding things that overlap, just to make sure, or if we wanted to keep that kind of stuff out and just kind of keep the code of conduct to, things that were not already in law. So I just wanted to bring that up as a question. I appreciate the answer.
Okay. Any other questions or comments on Alder Taft?
No, I just wanted to say I appreciate that, and I missed the beginning. I missed it in the beginning preamble, and that makes a lot of sense. So thank you for asking for that clarification, Alder Lemke. I really appreciate that. I think that makes that's good. But the only other two things that I have, though, I guess, are clarification that public should include social media. Is there a way to do that, Attorney Letney, to like include social media in the definition of sort of public interactions? Because I think that's an area where the laws have not really caught up to the way that social media has been used. So I wanted to hear more from you about that.
Sure. In section 3 on page 4, 3B, the first sentence reads, council members shall never demean or personally attack an employee regarding the employee's job performance or regarding personal issues in public, including at a meeting, when any other persons are present, or in any other public forum, including social media.
Does that definition of employee include other electeds?
Well, that part specifically talks about city employees.
So I'd like to see something similar extended to the section with interactions with electeds.
Okay. So perhaps in the civility and decorum and discussions and debate or something. So I'll take a note of that.
Duly noted. Alder Taft, I'm sorry, did you have another question?
No, and I know that, yeah, I know this is legalese, but I'd like to see a shift to like gender neutral language if we can, when we're trying to say he, she, if we could use gender neutral language, I think that would be something that we should move toward.
Okay.
Personally. So I don't know if Attorney Letney, I don't know if legally you have to write it that way or if you can write it in more gender neutral language. So if you have comments on that, I'm interested in hearing that.
No, it's just a matter of my shifting my habits about the way I draft things. So I will work on that, and I can make those changes if the council wants me to.
Okay. Alder Tate the second.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to encourage alders, all the feedback that's being produced, like, please make an amendment if you want that to be changed. Because I think we're belaboring and kind of beating around, like, if there's something that you need to be changed in this document, just please make the amendment so we can discuss that, codify it, and go forward. Thank you.
Thank you, President Tate the second. Alder Mi'kmaq.
Thank you, Your Honor. And that's kind of, I was going in that same direction. I was actually going to propose the amendments unless the people that were thinking them through would like to do that instead. I don't want to steal anybody's thunder.
We're getting a thumbs up from one of the questions. Okay. I guess
getting a go for it.
Alder Mi'kmaq, if you wanted to make an amendment, that would be in order at this time.
All right, I would like to make propose amendments to this document to include standing committees in the sections related to the ability for alders to attend meetings. I've lost track of what section that was now, but I think we can.
Section 6.
Yep, I'm looking in 5. That's why I'm not seeing it. Section 6, Part B. And an additional amendment to change the gender reference in this to be gender neutral, and a third amendment to include social media to the conduct relating to alders or elected officials. Those would be the 3 amendments I would propose at this time.
Is there a second for that amendment?
Second.
Seconded by Alder Taft. Discussion on the amendment itself. Seeing no further discussion on the amendment itself, when the clerk calls your name, please vote as you wish.
Alder Peterson,
Aye.
Alder Coe,
Aye.
Alder Jones,
Aye.
Alder Tate the second,
Aye.
Alder Santiago,
Aye.
Alder Horton,
Aye.
Alder West,
Aye.
Alder Pete,
Aye, excuse me. Aye.
Alder, thank you, Alder Rouse,
Aye.
Alder Taft,
Aye.
Alder Mi'kmaq,
Aye.
Alder Lemke.
Aye.
12 ayes.
That amendment passes unanimously. We're now back to the main motion, the proposal in front of us as amended. Any further discussion on the item as amended? Any further discussion on the item? Seeing no further discussion on the item, when the clerk calls your name, please vote as you wish.
Alder Peterson,
Aye.
Alder Coe,
Aye.
Alder Jones,
Aye.
Alder Tate II,
Aye.
Alder Santiago,
Aye.
Alder Horton,
Aye.
Alder West,
Aye.
Alder Pete,
Aye.
Alder Rouse,
Aye.
Alder Taft,
Aye.
Alder Meekma,
Aye.
Alder Lemke.
Aye.
12 ayes.
Passes unanimously. President Tate, did you have any other items for separate consideration on the committee of the whole report?
Certainly. We'll take up this last item. Item 0711-21, communication sponsored by myself, requesting to establish an ad hoc committee for aldermanic redistricting. Recommendations that the request to establish an ad hoc committee for redistricting include President Tate as chair, and he will appoint 4 alders along with, appoint 4 alders with the city clerk and city administrator to staff or their designees to staff said committee. Move to approve.
Second.
The motion to approve the item, there was a second by Alder Horton. Did I get that right?
Yep.
All right. Any further discussion on the formation of the redistricting committee?
I'll just comment briefly. So once this is through, any alders who are interested and want to participate in this committee, please email me, text me, expressing your interest. Hopefully we need at least 4 of you interested. It will be a time commitment. It's going to be a crunch. So as soon as the county is done, we have until roughly mid to late October to do our work, which is a sprint. And hopefully within that time, I'm hoping to have 2 public hearings, one on the front end before we start our deliberative processes, one on the back end once we have several renditions of maps available, and then before we present it to the council. So please express your interest so we can staff this committee, fill it, and then get our work in. Thank you.
And remember, if you're at all interested, it only comes around once every 10 years. So
This is true. Once in a decade opportunity.
that's right. Alder Lemke.
Sorry, trying to unmute myself. So I think this is great and I appreciate Alder Tate putting in all the work and I'm sure he's already thought of it. I don't know the degree to which people will have interest, but if there are numerous people, I just want to say that I think making sure that there are people from different age, race, gender, and, different views on the council, different committees, that kind of thing. But if only 4 people volunteer, we won't have the problem. And I'm sure Alder Tate's already thought of all of that, but just wanted to underscore that.
Appreciate it.
Well said, Alder Lemke. Any further discussion on the redistricting process? Seeing none, when the clerk calls your name, please vote as you wish.
Alder Peterson,
Aye.
Alder Coe,
Aye.
Alder Jones,
Aye.
Alder Tate II,
Aye.
Alder Santiago,
Aye.
Alder Horton,
Aye.
Alder West,
Aye.
Alder Pete,
Aye.
Alder Rouse,
Aye.
Alder Taft,
Aye.
Alder Meekma,
Aye.
Alder Lemke.
Aye.
12 ayes.
That motion carries. Moving on to the report of the Office of the Mayor. Alder Tate, did you have any items for separate consideration?
I do have an item for separate consideration. That is item 0690-21, communications from Mayor Mason requesting the Common Council adopt a policy requiring that City of Racine employees comply with certain COVID testing and public health protections, recommendations that it be adopted. And I will note that there is an amended resolution noting, and I'll defer to the city administrator to speak to those amendments as what's being adopted, but the motion is to adopt.
Motion to adopt as amended. Is there a second? Alder
Second.
Taft is seconding the item. I will simply refer to the city administrator just to give an update on this since last we spoke and the policy behind it. Paul?
Sure. So I'll go directly to the question on the amended version, and that it was more specifically kind of a language nuance to get to the policy we really are trying to adopt. And that is instead of requiring just testing to show you're negative, really to require a negative test, right? That you aren't positive when you are here at work, and we need to know that you're negative when you're here at work. So that really was just a nuanced change. If you have specific questions, I'm sure Attorney Letney could clarify that, but he thought that made it very clear what the intentions of the city were. So just kind of not fast forward, but from last week, this was deferred to tonight's meeting. And that was, I think many members were interested in the unions, fire and police unions request to meet on this proposal. That meeting did occur end of last week with both chiefs and Attorney Letney. I think all reports are, and I'll let Attorney Letney give you any more details. Obviously, it's bargaining, so we're not going to go into a lot of negotiating in public, but it was, I think by all parties thought it was productive and instructive. And I think we covered some issues that we can certainly consider. But remember, it is a bargaining issue. And so hopefully we'll come to, an MOU, an agreement of this policy toward what their concerns are. But regardless, we have, a place they have to, in order to grieve, if they don't like it or don't agree with it, the policy has to be adopted. Do you want me to stop, Mayor, for Alder Peterson?
I don't think so. I just want to clarify that there was one other small amendment. We moved the start date of the proposed ordinance from today to Monday. I believe that was included. Yes.
Yes. A different date was.
Yeah. So there's an overview there. Alder Peterson has his hand up. So Alder Peterson, did you want to ask a question or speak to the motion?
Both.
Okay. You have the floor.
One being that we're encouraging and trying to reward individuals for being vaccinated. At this time, obviously, it's got to be negotiated with the unions, I guess, but for the non-reps, why are we not? My understanding is at this point, we are not giving them paid time off or administrative leave if they catch COVID. I know for the police department and the fire department, the majority of their time is with individuals out in public, and obviously the majority of the public is not vaccinated at this time, and they're dealing hands-on transporting people to and from the hospital and to and from the jails, as well as other public employees going out into the general public and working. So I'm just curious why that's not part of this program. That's the first one.
So I'll answer it in two ways. One is vaccination. You still are, there are many opportunities. We have even offered to do on-site vaccines for fire and police personnel. There is time off allowed, of course, approved by your supervisor to get a vaccine. And there are still incentives in place to get a vaccine. So city employees still can get a $200 incentive for their HSA, and their spouses are eligible for $100.
My reference was to, if you catch COVID, you have to use your own sick time.
Right. I thought that you were talking about, we don't allow them to go get tested on work. And I was making a distinction about the vaccine versus, so yes, if you catch COVID, our policy currently now is you have to use your own personal time, your sick and vacation in order to address that.
Right.
Because now the vaccine, because we believe the vaccine is available and people can take better protections for themselves. And I'm
talking about people that are vaccinated. I'm not talking about unvaccinated people. I'm talking about people that have been vaccinated.
Okay.
We've told them to get vaccinated.
Yeah.
They catch, they get the outbreak. Why are they not being, taken care of, so to speak, and given time off?
So that is an issue that was raised just recently, and we are evaluating that. And I think that makes a lot of sense. And again, I don't want to negotiate on this forum, but it is something that we are evaluating. And I think we need to look to make it sure it's a good public policy all around. And Attorney Letney, will agree to that and take it back to for further discussion with the unions if that's what we want to do. But I hear your concern. It makes a lot of sense.
Right, but it doesn't have to be negotiated for general employees, non-reps. It can just be
Correct.
implemented.
That
That
is
would-
correct. Yes.
At which point I would make an amendment that anybody that's vaccinated is given paid time off to recover from
For non-reps?
COVID, all
Yeah.
non-reps.
Yep.
That are vaccinated
Mm-hmm.
get paid time off for their recovery, their 10 days or whatever the health department's requiring.
There's a motion to amend this item to include paid time off for non-reps if they have a Delta breakthrough. Is there, I would just say this, the caution that the city administrator recommended, this is not the forum to do collective bargaining. And so I just want to caution people about how that is. We do have a proposal before us. There may be a trailer proposal that comes along that may affect represented employees. There may be a trailer proposal that comes along to affect unrepresented employees. So I just caution people as they consider amending this on the floor here. Is there a second for Alder Peterson's amendment? Alder Coe?
Yes, I'll second it.
Okay. Discussion on the amendment? Alder Peterson, did you want to speak more to your amendment? You have the
No,
floor.
I think I was fairly clear. Thank you very much.
Alder Coe, did you want to speak to the item?
I want to speak to the item, but not to the amendment right now. So let's
Okay.
get past the amendment.
So what we have before us is an amendment. Alder Taft, did you want to speak to the amendment or to the main motion?
I just wanted to speak to the amendment real quickly, just the fact that breakthrough infections are actually a lot more rare than folks have been sort of like than we've seen in a lot of news and a lot of discussions. You know, 1 in 5,000 chance, maybe 1 in 10,000 chance if you wear a mask and take precautions. So understandably, you know, folks who interface with the public, you know, that's important and I don't have a problem with it, but I want to make sure that the amendment is talking about fully vaccinated folks, not like one shot, but like, you know, fully vaccinated plus the 2 weeks after vaccination. And Mr. Mayor, you made reference to the Delta, and I just don't want it to be specific to Delta because there are other mutations that are likely to pop up. So I just want to make sure we're talking about breakthrough infections in fully vaccinated folks, you know, as defined by.
I will make that part of the clarification for the amendment. Thank you.
Duly noted, Alder Peterson. I'm going to ask the city attorney to maybe draft up reflecting what Alder Peterson said with Alder Taft's clarification. We'll read it back here to make sure it's reflecting what Alder Peterson intended in the amendment. Alder Tate the second.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm actually in support of the amendment, not necessarily tied to this particular item. And the reason why is because that entails potentially some significant financial costs, and we have not deliberated what those costs may be and understood what impacts those may be, what funds we're withdrawing from, and to where those funds that we're withdrawing from currently exist. And I think that's an important due diligence piece that we have to do before implementing a essentially citywide policy for staffing. So, you know, I would be in support of right now, you know, sponsoring an item to go through the deliberative process for finance and personnel to the council about developing a policy that does provide paid time off for breakthrough infections for fully vaccinated staff. But I wouldn't be in support of doing it right now as a trailer to the testing policy because the data and the due diligence isn't before us as it relates to, like, there's no fiscal note on this one right now. And that particular amendment would probably have a pretty substantial fiscal note, even if we would just take the city staff and what the percentage odds were of breakthrough infections. Like, there's a cost associated with that is not currently identified. So that's why I wouldn't be supporting this particular amendment, but I would be happily sponsor a standalone item relating to a policy for city staff and time off if they were to contract a breakthrough infection.
Alder Tate, you're raising a good point of order procedurally in terms of the fiscal impact. I don't know if City Administrator Vornholt wants to speak to the fiscal impact, but it's a good point that may require us to run it through finance and personnel for future deliberation if there is a potential fiscal impact. Administrator Vornholt, do you have any way of knowing, or
Well,
is there?
No, because we don't know enough about the data, and I understand the intent of what Alder Peterson is saying, and it seems very logical, but the other policy concern that we want to investigate is we want to make sure that, again, we're not incentivizing people to not take proper care of themselves. There's more than just getting vaccinated, right? Are they going inside and not wearing a mask in other areas where they're not required? Are there other behaviors that they're feeling more free because now there's no risk of sick time? I'm not saying anybody's doing that. I'm just saying there are implications that we haven't thought through when this idea was brought forward. Not just the fiscal implication. I mean, maybe it will be minor because there's not a lot of breakthroughs, but we don't want to encourage behavior that is more risky to our employees than not. And just because it makes perfect sense, maybe there's a balance test that we're doing here on having them risk some of their sick time and not all of their sick time or something. Maybe there's a combination, but we just haven't had time to look at it, vet it, and consult with people.
Okay, I don't know if Kathleen Fisher is still on the
No.
line. Okay, she's
no
not.
longer, no.
Okay, so if there is a fiscal impact, I think procedurally we have to run it separately through finance and personnel and have it proposed as an item with a fiscal estimate that would have an impact on it. It's also spending money outside of the budget process, which requires a different threshold for passage if it does expend funds. So
Well, I would defer to Attorney Letney on that question.
Attorney Letney, can you talk to this procedurally?
Sure. If this turns into a budget amendment, which would suggest the funds aren't already authorized, then it requires a 2/3 vote. We do have an ordinance that requires all ordinances, resolutions, and communications before the council to carry a fiscal note containing sufficient information to fully advise the common council and the general public of the fiscal impact of such item.
So Alder Peterson, just procedurally then, I'm wondering if you'd be willing to withdraw your amendment and have it referred to finance and personnel for future consideration.
Will it be at the next finance meeting?
I'll ask
I don't want
city
to
administrator
defer for a month.
we can have it done by then. I think we can certainly make a commitment to do every effort, and Alder Taft is the chair. That's ultimately her decision if it's on the next finance and personnel committee meeting.
I mean, I don't have a problem. I mean, if we can get it fully drafted, and I think it's an important thing to deliberate, I have absolutely no problem putting it on the F&P agenda for Monday. For the next finance and personnel meeting, which
Monday.
I believe is Monday.
Monday.
But yeah, I think so. But yeah, I think if we get it drafted in time, I have no problem. I'm happy to put it on. I think it's important.
Alder Peterson?
I will defer and have it transferred over to the finance committee meeting if the second okay with it.
Alder Coe, are you okay with that?
Yeah, I've just got a question to ask them. Can I
Well,
ask?
can we just,
Well, it has to do with it before I make that. So what I'm asking, so they got to figure out where the funds would come from. Could we take that money from the COVID relief in order to do that, so it wouldn't impact our budget from another source of money?
yeah, that's a good question, Alder Coe, that I don't know that we know the answer to. I think we would have to explore what the ARPA fund requirements may be. It certainly seems like it would be a logical place to go, but without the finance director here, who knows a lot more about the ins and outs of proposed ARPA funds, I don't think we could say at this moment.
Okay, thank you.
Just to clarify though, Alder Coe, you're okay as the seconder withdrawing your second to the amendment with the good faith effort to get it on the agenda to Monday's finance and personnel meeting.
Yeah, yes, I am.
Okay, great. Then we are back to the main motion without the amendment. Alder Coe Alder Peterson, you technically still have the floor. Did you want to speak to the main motion any further?
Yes, I'm just this is, I guess, clarification. This is all in regards to employees. Are we doing this same type of activity for public buildings like community centers, library, being that we're trying to keep our workers safe, making sure everybody either vaccinated or shows a negative test to go into any of those buildings?
Refer your question to the city administrator.
So this only would apply to city employees. This would not apply to people coming into buildings or the public using our facility.
Right, so the carrot and the stick isn't no good for that. It's only for giving the employees a beating.
Well, there's a lot of vaccine incentives out for city residents as well.
Right, like I say, yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Alder Pete.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want clarification, then depending on the answer, I'll have a question. Going back to Alder Peterson's original amendment, are we speaking, I heard the term represented versus non-represented, representative in terms of the incentive. Is that correct, first of all? Are we making a distinction here?
So what Alder Peterson proposed doesn't currently exist. So, but I believe what he was saying was proposing tonight, applying it to non-represented employees who are not in the collective bargaining units, with the understanding that for that to be achieved, we could use the collective bargaining process for those who are covered by collective bargaining agreements. And Alder Peterson, if I misrepresented the way you phrased that, please correct me, but that was the distinction being made.
Okay, thank you.
Alder Peterson, is that correct?
That's good, thank you.
Okay, then I would have another point or comment that I would like to make. I would be a little bit concerned, and I realize that many of the speakers that went before me addressed part of what I'm getting ready to say, but I'm a little bit concerned with people working together, and let's put the incentive side separate for the moment, but we're in the same basically family, and I'm being incentivized to be vaccinated and do the right thing, but I'm working with someone who's not, or the other side of that is I'm being compensated and they're not. And again, I realize this is some for finance and personnel, but I think we should also take that into consideration. In other words, if I didn't say it as eloquently as I could have, the non-represented person is as much of a threat to the various variants of the virus as the vaccinated person. So we might want to look at incentivizing how are they compensated for time off when they have to be quarantined and what have you.
Understood. I think that's in line with what Alder Peterson was suggesting.
Thank you.
Alder Coe.
Yeah, just a couple of questions. First, I don't know if Dottie K is in, but my first question is, some people that had the COVID shot have tested positive. So I guess my question would be, not knowing if they're positive or negative, why would we not have every employee tested?
I don't see Dottie K here. I do see Cody Pierce here. I will ask Paul to try to answer that question first from a policy standpoint. Paul?
And Dottie K and Cody are both here. So
oh, my apologies.
I'm more technical, but I mean, to get to your question of why are we not requiring everybody to be tested, even the vaccinated, is that this city has basically followed the guidelines up till now of the CDC. So when masks were recommended indoors, you just took an action to require masks indoors. Right now, the CDC says the best thing you can do is get vaccinated, and it minimizes the severity and it minimizes the hospitalization increases. So we're following that in terms of trying to incentivize the employees, but also ensuring that our vaccinated employees feel comfortable and safe, because we do have a duty to have a safe workplace for our employees. So we do think that it's reasonable to put in a workplace rule that says we need to know that you're negative, working alongside people who have become vaccinated. Two other reasons that we're not requiring testing is that, and I will let Dottie K speak to this more, is that we don't want to over demand. Right now, vaccines and testing are readily available. you know, at many sites, and they're free. So I guess if to require everybody who's been vaccinated, and that's what the CDC says is the best thing you can do right now. Now, if they come back and let's say these breakthrough variant A, variant B, variant C comes back and says, now we want you to test people even vaccinated, then we'll probably bring that recommendation to you if that's what .ek thinks is the best thing to do based on the CDC guidelines. We've been pretty consistent up until now. And so I think that that's the best way to do is follow the science, follow the policy, and follow what the CDC is telling us.
All right. Well, like I said, okay, go, yeah, my concern was, I mean, but if they have COVID, they can transmit it. So that was my concern. And my other question is, why can't we use our firefighters for testing employees? These guys administer drugs when they're on ambulances and stuff. Why can't they do in-house testing with them, you know, with each other there while they're on their 24-hour shift?
I don't know that they can. Alder Peterson might know the answer to that better than I can. They have, remember, been helping us in vaccines and testing at Festival Hall, doing overtime. Obviously, we've got other staffing priorities that they have to do first, right? The on-call. So it's whether or not they want to sign up for the extra time. I think it's more of the issue.
Yeah. Well, I'm getting into a point. I said I had every intention. I was going to abstain on this item because I'm not agreeing with either side, but I've never abstained on a vote. But I'm disappointed in the union and the city. There's give and take. We need to start working together. You know, you guys had a meeting last week. I thought you guys would get something accomplished. I'm voting no on this item. I am not sticking up for the unions, and I believe by voting yes on this item without working together will lead to more distrust. We have great employees, and we should put out that olive branch. This goes for employees also. As an alderman, I am trying to do the best I can for everyone. We are not always going to agree on everything, but we need to start working together. And like I said, somehow or another, we got to get on the same page here to get people together. That's all I got to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Alder Peterson.
Yes, in regards to firefighters being able to test, I mean, I'm not there any longer, but if they could do all the testing that they did for in the basement of the annex building, I'm sure they have no problem doing a nose swab. And if we're requiring them to be tested, I see why I don't understand why they couldn't do it at work. You know, it becomes a burden, and I understand that, you know, and that's kind of the carrot and the stick kind of thing. But if they can be tested at work, I see no reason why they shouldn't be able to test themselves at work.
Okay. Alder Coe, you still have the floor? Or is your hand
yeah.
still-
Well, the reason why I asked that is because it's my understanding that they have to go someplace else to be tested, to our clinic or something like that.
Alder Coe, I will just say again, we're not going to bargain with the unions in open session here.
All right,
So-
it wasn't about bargaining.
But these are topics
All
for
right.
discussion that we've had with the bargaining units, and we've had some good faith discussions of those here. But the way the collective bargaining process works is we empower the administration to go sit down at the table in good faith with the bargaining units. If they can reach an agreement, they bring it back to the respective sides. But that's not something that's sort of spitballed in open session.
Okay, and I apologize. I haven't talked to them about this either. It's just my own opinion. So, but thank you.
Sure. Alder Taft.
No, I was just going to say, like, testing requires equipment and materials, and that requires a fiscal note as well. So I'm just like, I just didn't want to go down that road. So I just was going to say that, like, it's a way to stop talking about that.
Any further discussion on the item as proposed? Seeing no further discussion, when the clerk calls your name, please vote as you wish.
Alder Peterson,
No.
Alder Coe,
No.
Alder Jones,
Yes.
Alder Tate II,
Aye.
Alder Santiago,
No.
Alder Horton,
No.
Alder West,
Yes.
Alder Pete,
Aye.
Alder Rouse,
Aye.
Alder Taft,
Aye.
Alder Mikma,
Aye.
Alder Lemke.
Aye.
8 ayes, 4 noes.
The motion carries. Alder Tate II, did you have any other items for separate consideration under the mayor's report?
Just the appointments, which by practice I'd like for us to all vote on because it's, but otherwise,
I would just point out there is a direct referral that is there from Public Works as well. Public Works wasn't able to meet for lack of quorum. This needed to be direct referred just so that we didn't have to rebid the process all over again. I'm not saying it needs separate consideration, but I did want to point it out to the members.
in that case, I think it does need separate consideration. Item 0673-21, direct referral by Mayor Mason, communication sponsored by Alder Jones. On behalf of the Department of Public Works, submitting bid results for contract 2021-1073, City Racine Transit Facilities Repair Stage, number 1, CDBG. Recommendation is that the contract be awarded to Berglund Construction Company, the amount of $115,000 with an alternate bid of $75,000 and another alternate bid of $50,000 for a total potential contract amount of $240,000, they being the lowest responsive bidder. Funding is available in the various brick and mortar ride accounts. Move to approve.
Second.
A motion to approve the item, seconded by Alder Jones. And Alder Tate, if you wouldn't mind, I would ask Alder Jones if she wanted to speak to the motion at all, since she probably knows more about it than anyone else. Alder Jones?
Not at this time. I believe Assistant Commissioner Pritchloff was supposed to be on to speak to the item.
If needed, if people have questions, they are certainly able to ask. If there aren't any, it's not necessary. Are there any questions on this item?
I'd be interested in knowing what this is, since it's the first time appearing
There,
before the
there is water damage in the basement of the transit center, the historic railroad station at the Corinne Owens Transit Center. It has needed repair for some time. We allocated CDBG funds the year before last to do this work and have finally found a bidder appropriate to do the work. It is necessary structurally for the long-term viability of that historic structure. And Alder Jones, if I mischaracterize any of that, please correct me.
No, excellent. Thank you.
Satisfied.
All right. Any further discussion on this item? Seeing none, when the clerk calls your name, please vote as you wish.
Alder Peterson,
Aye.
Alder Coe,
Aye.
Alder Jones,
Aye.
Alder Tate II,
Aye.
Alder Santiago,
Aye.
Alder Horton,
Aye.
Alder West,
Aye.
Alder Pete,
Aye.
Alder Rouse,
Aye.
Alder Taft,
Aye.
Alder Mikma,
Aye.
Alder Lemke.
Aye.
12 ayes.
And then the final item, Alder Tate.
All right, communications is item 0720-21, communication sponsored by Mayor Mason, appointing the following: Jessica Diaz to the Sex Offender Residency Board for a term expiring in April 2022. Alder Jones in the position of Chair to the Transit Commission for a term expiring in April 2022. And Lizeth Brito to the Transit Commission for a term expiring in May 2024. Move to approve and confirm those appointments.
Second.
Motion to approve that item and seconded by Alder Coe, I think I heard first on that. Any discussion on those appointments? Seeing no discussion, when the clerk calls your name, please vote as you wish.
Alder Peterson,
Aye.
Alder Coe,
Aye.
Alder Jones,
Aye.
Alder Tate II,
Aye.
Alder Santiago,
Aye.
Alder Horton,
Aye.
Alder West,
Aye.
Alder Pete,
Aye.
Alder Rouse,
Aye.
Alder Taft,
Aye.
Alder Mikma,
Aye.
Alder Lemke.
Aye.
12 ayes.
There are 12 ayes and 0 noes. That motion carries. This now takes us to the consent agenda. Alder Tate, at this time, would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Move to approve the consent agenda.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
Seconded by several. Alder West, I think, got there first. All those in favor of the consent agenda, if everyone could unmute themselves briefly. Everyone in favor of the consent agenda, please say aye.
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 Opposed? That motion carries. We'll now move on to announcements. Just as a reminder, announcements are limited to recognition of city residents and employees, memorials, and non-political community events. Discussion of matters related to governmental business is prohibited. Are there any announcements at this time? Alder Coe.
Yes, at this time, I would like to ask everyone to welcome my newest granddaughter, was born on September 4th. Her name is Faye Marie. She was 6 pounds, 14 ounces, 19 inches long, and a very beautiful, healthy baby. So just want to say.
Congratulations.
Loving it. Thank you much. Loving it all. Take care.
Congratulations.
Any other
Any
announcements?
grandchildren?
Say
Any other
again?
announcements?
It sounds like nobody else had any grandchildren, no one wants to follow that our new grandbaby.
Hard to beat a new grandbaby. If there's no further announcements, Alder West, at this time, I entertain a motion to adjourn.
All right, move to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Is there many seconds? All those in favor of adjournments, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries and we are adjourned. Stay safe, everyone.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Night.